Most parents believe that praising their child is one of the most important things they can do to build confidence, motivation, and self esteem. And on the surface, that makes perfect sense. You want your child to feel good about themselves. You want them to believe they're capable. You want them to keep trying, keep learning, keep growing. So you say things like, "Good job. You're so smart. I'm so proud of you. You're amazing." And here's the part no one tells you. The way most parents praise their children is quietly destroying the very motivation they're trying to build. Not instantly, not dramatically, but slowly, over time, in ways that are almost invisible while they're happening. Because what looks like encouragement on the surface is often teaching something very different underneath. It's teaching your child to depend on approval, to fear mistakes, to avoid challenges, and eventually to stop trying altogether. And the reason this happens is not because praise is bad, it's because the type of praise most parents use sends the wrong signal to a developing brain. A signal that says, my value comes from what I do and how others react to it, instead of, my value comes from who I am and my ability to grow. When your child does something and you immediately respond with, good job, something very specific happens in their brain. At first, it feels good. They light up, they smile, they feel seen. But over time, their brain starts making a connection. I did something and then I got approval. And that approval becomes the reward. Not the activity, not the effort, not the learning, the approval. To help you understand this, imagine going to work every day and only feeling good about your performance when someone praises you. If your boss says, great job, you feel motivated. If they say nothing, your motivation drops. Eventually, you stop working for the work itself, you start working for the reaction. That's exactly what happens to children. At first, they enjoy drawing, building, exploring. But once praise becomes the main reward, the focus shifts. Now the question becomes, will I get praised for this? Instead of, do I enjoy this? And over time, something subtle but powerful happens. If the praise disappears, the motivation disappears with it. So instead of building independence, constant praise can create emotional dependence. Dependence on feedback, dependence on approval, dependence on someone else telling them they did well. So from now on, I want you to start noticing something. When your child does something, pause before you praise. Instead of immediately saying, good job, describe what you see. You worked really hard on that. You kept trying even when it was difficult. You figured that out step by step. This shifts the reward from your approval to their experience, and that changes everything. Number 2, praise teaches children to avoid challenges. This is one of the most misunderstood effects of praise. When you tell a child, you're so smart, it sounds positive, it sounds encouraging, but what their brain hears is something very specific. My value comes from being smart. And that creates pressure, because now every challenge becomes a risk. If they try something difficult and fail, what does that say about them? Maybe they're not smart anymore. So instead of taking risks, they start avoiding them. This has been shown in multiple studies. Children who are praised for intelligence are more likely to avoid difficult tasks, give up faster, choose easier challenges, and feel more stress when they struggle because their identity is now tied to performance. Imagine being told your whole life that you're the smart one. At first, it feels amazing, but eventually you become afraid of anything that might prove otherwise, so you play it safe. That's what happens to kids. Praise that focuses on traits creates fragile confidence. confidence that only exists when things go well. So instead of praising traits, shift to praising process. Not "you're so smart," but "you tried different ways to solve that. You didn't give up. That was a tough problem and you stayed with it." Now the child learns my value comes from effort, not perfection. And effort is something they can always control. Children are naturally curious. They want to explore, they want to learn, they want to understand the world. But praise can interrupt this natural drive. Here's how. A child is drawing a picture, they're focused, they're experimenting, they're enjoying the process. Then an adult says, "Wow, that's amazing." Now the focus shifts. Before, they were drawing because they wanted to. Now they're drawing for the reaction. And the next time they draw, something changes. They might ask, "Do you like it? Is this good? Is this better?" Their attention moves away from the activity and toward your evaluation. Over time, this creates a pattern. Instead of asking, "What do I think about this?" they ask, "What do others think about this?" That's the moment intrinsic motivation starts to fade. And once that happens, it becomes very difficult to rebuild because the child is no longer guided by internal curiosity. They're guided by external approval. So here's the shift. When your child shows you something, resist the urge to evaluate. Instead, get curious. What do you like about it? How did you come up with that? What part was your favorite? This brings their attention back to their own experience, and that's where real motivation lives. When children are constantly praised for doing things right, they begin to associate mistakes with failure. Not just failure of the task, but failure of themselves. Because if good gets praise, what does not good get? Silence? Disappointment? Correction? Over time, the child learns mistakes reduce connection, and that creates fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of trying something new, fear of not meeting expectations. So instead of experimenting, they start playing it safe. Imagine learning something new in an environment where every mistake feels like a loss of approval. You'd become cautious. You'd avoid risks. You'd stop pushing yourself. That's exactly what happens to kids. So instead of praising outcomes, normalize mistakes. When your child struggles, say, "That was tricky. You're still learning." Mistakes help your brain grow. Not as empty reassurance, but as a real shift in how you respond. Because when mistakes feel safe, learning accelerates. This is the deepest and most important layer. When praise is focused mostly on achievements, grades, behavior, performance, skills, the child begins to form an identity. I am valuable when I perform well. And that creates a hidden pressure. Because what happens when they don't perform well? Do they lose value? Do they lose approval? Do they lose connection? This is how children become perfectionists, overachievers, people pleasers, or completely unmotivated because their sense of worth is unstable. It depends on outcomes, and outcomes are unpredictable. So some children push harder, trying to secure that approval, and others withdraw because it feels impossible to maintain. But underneath both patterns is the same belief: I have to earn my value. So here's what needs to change. Your child needs to feel valued even when they fail, even when they struggle, even when they do nothing impressive. That doesn't mean no praise. It means connection without conditions. Moments where you're present, engaged, and warm without requiring performance. Because when a child feels valued for who they are, they don't need constant praise. They don't need external validation. They develop something much stronger, a stable sense of self. Praise isn't the problem, but automatic, constant, outcome-based praise is.
The goal is not to stop encouraging your child. The goal is to change what you reinforce, from results to effort, approval to awareness, performance to process, external to internal. Because the child who is constantly praised may look confident, but the child who learns to value their own effort becomes unstoppable.